offline.
Welcome back to the Friday Night Deck Review Final Polish, where we take a second look at the 2 decks submitted for Friday Night Deck Review, and now that I've gotten time to sit with them, give you some more in-depth suggestions from me personally. And I consider myself a bit of a Magic professor. I've got the quarter zip on, that's what it does to a guy. What can I say? The first deck we looked at this week was Quasi-Quafta's Arna Kennerud Sky Captain deck. Arna is 2, a white, a blue, and a black for a 4/4 flying lifelink, ward, discard a card. Whenever a modified creature you control attacks, if it had any counters on it, double those counters. If it had any auras on it, put another one of those auras as a token on it. If it had any equipments, do the same. Quasi clearly understands the game plan here, as we're trying to go tall with cards like Ledger Shredder, who has flying and will give itself 1/1 counters that we can start doubling, or we go wide with stuff like Archon of Sun's Grace, which also taps into the fact that the deck runs auras, because whenever we play an enchantment, we get a 2/2 Pegasus with flying. So, or we do a little bit of both, with something like Drana, Liberator of Malakir being an evasive flyer that puts 1/1 counters on itself, but also puts 1/1 counters on everything you control that's attacking. My favorite card from his version of this deck has to be Invasion of New Capenna, and when it enters, you may exile an artifact or creature you control, and then you exile an artifact or creature an opponent controls if you do that. That's pretty good in a token deck. I'm going to be putting this in my Arna list for sure. Best part is it's got 4 health, and if you manage to defeat it, it flips back into play into Holy Frazzle Cannon. This equipment equips for 1, and whenever equipped creature attacks, put a 1/1 counter on that creature, and each other creature you control that shares a type with it. Tokens. Yeah, this is incredible. It needs to go in my Arna deck immediately. If you want to check out the VOD, it's over on the channel if you want to see some of the stuff we suggested on there, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is I got some spicy suggestions now that I've gotten to sit with it and think about it, all right? So buckle up, Quasi. My first one is my weakest one. I always like to start with my weakest one, all right? I'm not sure you'll be that into this because I know you were saying evasion feels a little redundant when a bunch of your stuff already has evasion. Totally get that. Thought I would shout this out because maybe another Arna player is watching that might be building a slightly different build that might like it, or maybe you might like it, who knows. A stealth mission is 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Put 2 1/1 counters on target creature, and it can't be blocked until end of turn. Let's say you have something with 2 counters on it in Arna. You got a 1/1 with 2 counters on it. It now has 4 counters on it, and you swing with it, and it's a 9/9 now, and it can't be blocked. That's not bad, and I could see some Arna builds really liking this, because in Arna, this card essentially reads 2 and a blue, put 4 1/1 counters on something, and it can't be blocked this turn. But weakest one, again. May I recommend Shale, Dean of Radiance. For 1 and a white, we get a 1/1 flying vigilance. You can tap it to put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control that entered this turn. Even if you're not making tokens, a thing that just gives creatures that enter extra 1/1 counters when you tap it, that it itself is a 1/1 flying vigilance. Feel like that's kind of what you're looking for. But if that's not what you're looking for, the Dean has a backside, and the backside is Embros, Dean of Shadows, being 2 and 2 black for a 4/4 that you can tap, put a 1/1 counter on a creature you control, deal 2 damage to that creature. And it's also got, whenever a creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it dies, draw a card. Either side of this one I think is incredible. You get a passive card draw engine on the black side, and then on the white side you just get a 1/1 counter engine that's on a flying vigilance. I know I recommended it on the stream, but I'll throw in a quick Silent Hall Creeper because that is the best card in Arna. I'm convinced of it. Please try it out. And finally, my favorite suggestion for the Arna list, Rapacious Guest. 2 and a black for a 2/2 menace. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a food token. Whenever you sacrifice a food token, put a 1/1 counter on Rapacious Guest. When Rapacious Guest leaves the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to its power. Really evasive, built-in way to give itself 1/1 counters. Start doubling those 1/1 counters with Arna. Make it huge. So you've got a huge menace beater. And then if anyone tries to ever do anything about it, someone's getting smoked for a ton of damage because it's when it leaves the battlefield. No one can handle this thing without it dealing damage. Moving on to LJL's submission of his General Ferrous Rockrick. Oh, that's why you told me to call him Rocky Rick. I'm so dumb. He's 1 a red and a white for a 3/1 hexproof from monocolor. Whenever you cast a multicolor spell, create a 4/4 white and red golem. This is Commander, and this thing triggers with multicolor spells being cast, and it's a Boros deck, so the only thing that you can get this thing to trigger with is Boros cards, unless they make the hybrid mana switch, which my boy's gonna love that if that happens. That might open him up to some cool stuff. And let's just say, LJL has seen every single Boros card multiple times, so Boros card suggestions were off the table. He's got all the good Boros stuff. He floods the board with 4/4s for just playing Boros aggro stuff. Throw a Gisela in there for extra combats. Throw a Sammy Wildcat Captain in there for affinity for artifacts with all the 4/4 golems we're going to be making. It's a really sick list. Finding recommendations during stream was really hard because, again, it's only Boros. You can only trigger it with Boros, and he's seen all the Boros cards multiple times. I think we got a couple decent suggestions in on the stream, but after sitting with it for a second, I think I actually have 3 pretty good suggestions for this deck, all right? And I'm excited to share them with you. Martyr's Cause, 2 and a white, enchantment, Sacrifice a creature. Prevent all damage to a creature or player from any source. So like with all the small creatures you're running in this deck and all the tokens your commander makes, this feels like it's a pretty decent card. Any big creature swings at you, you're like, I'll crack a golem and just not take any of that, which opens you up to swinging with those golems now, and you don't have to keep them up for blockers if you didn't want to take that damage. Now you can just sack them to not take that damage. Kind of cool. Someone tries to blasphemous act you can protect one of your important pieces. Maybe you try to blasphemous act on them and then prevent it from killing some of your stuff. You can do some cool stuff here. Again, weakest one. Mana Cannons. 2 and a red, enchantment. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, it deals X damage to any target, where X is the amount of colors in that spell. So every time you're casting Boros spells, you just get to ping, you get to shock something every time you're casting a Boros spell, which seems like all the time in this deck. Then if the hybrid mana switch goes through, this could be even better in that list. But getting a bonus shock and 4/4 golem out of all your Boros cards, that seems good to me. And it kind of fits on theme. And then finally, the spiciest suggestion of all time. Are you ready for this one? Brave the Elements. 1 white for an instant. Choose a color. White creatures you control get protection from that color until end of turn. What's white in your deck? Oh, every Boros creature, which is every creature, and all of your golems, because they're white-red. So this just pretty much gives your entire board protection from a color. Again, we can talk about the like Blasphemous Act implications or like the combat damage blocking implications. You could also just get through really easy with a ton of creatures. Someone's running like a 2-color deck, name one of their colors, swing all your stuff at them. Yeah, they're probably gonna die. If you actually like any of these suggestions, Quasi Crafter or LJL, please drop a comment, let me know. If any of you guys watching have suggestions for these guys' decks, let them know in the comments. You can also find both the deck list down in the comments as well if you want to take a more in-depth look at the deck list. If you want to submit your own deck list for Friday Night Deck Reviews, you can become a YouTube member, Patreon member for as low as $1, gain access to the submission form. Easy as that. Anyway, if you guys want to drop a subscribe, hit the bell, go for it. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.